The tension in Atlanta didn't just sit in the room, it pressed down on everyone's chest, heavy and suffocating. You could almost hear the silence breathing, a stillness so sharp that even the smallest movements felt loud. When Scrappy walked in, he carried more than just his body weight. He dragged weeks of frustration, sleepless nights replaying arguments, and the bitterness of being underestimated for too long. His walk wasn't the casual shuffle people were used to, the kind of step that usually said he'd rather joke his way out of a fight than throw hands. This time his jaw was tight, his shoulders squared, his eyes refusing to dart around for an escape. He wasn't here to make peace or patch wounds. He was here with a purpose, and everyone could feel the difference before he even sat down. Across the table, Kirk Frost leaned back with his usual smugness, a smirk stretched thin across his face, trying to project control even though his pride was cracked wide open. He'd been stewing for weeks after Scrappy called him out on camera, and now his arrogance was just armor over bruised ego. Right beside him sat Rashida, her loyalty visible in the way her arm brushed his, as if to remind the world she was still standing with him through it all. But her eyes betrayed her composure. They darted nervously, scanning the faces in the room like she could feel the thunder rolling in before the lightning struck. Then came Yandy Smith and Mendices Harris, walking in like a pair who had lived too many years under judgment to even bother hiding their tension anymore. Their expressions were stone, but their footsteps were heavy, dragging the weight of past betrayals behind them. Young Jock was already there, his grin not quite reaching his eyes, his fingers twitching as if even he knew laughter wasn't going to save this night. He sat like a man at the edge of his seat, waiting for the kind of explosion you couldn't joke your way out of. At first, no one spoke. The silence wasn't calm. It was loaded, dangerous, as if the room itself was daring someone to say the wrong thing. Chairs creaked, glasses clinked against the table, but every sound felt magnified, every echo bouncing off walls like a warning. It was Kirk who broke it, leaning forward with his voice dipped in sarcasm sharp enough to slice skin. "Funny thing about loyalty," he murmured, his eyes locked on Scrappy. "Everybody talks about it, but not everybody's built for it." The words floated in the air like smoke, lingering, choking. Scrappy's head lifted slowly, his stare locking onto Kirk with a stillness more dangerous than shouting. His voice was low, calm, but it carried weight, every word pressing down on the room. "Loyalty? Don't come at me with that. Handle your own house before you try throwing shade on mine." That was the crack in the dam. The tension snapped into something raw, something alive. Rashida's hand shot to Kirk's arm, squeezing hard like she could anchor him, her lips pressed tight, her face pale. Yandy shifted uncomfortably, her lips parting in disbelief. Mendices leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together like a man watching a storm roll in, waiting for the lightning to hit. Jock whispered, "Here we go," under his breath, but no one had the courage to laugh. Kirk chuckled, but the sound was hollow, brittle, a cover for the sting he'd just felt. "You gon' sit there and tell me about loyalty?" His voice rose with each word, his posture stiffening, anger seeping through his act. "Don't get it twisted, I built mine, I kept mine, and I don't answer to you." Scrappy pushed his chair back, the scrape echoing like a warning shot. His voice wasn't low anymore. It was filled with years of swallowed anger. "You built yours? Stop lying to yourself. You've been tearing your house down for years. You embarrassed that woman sitting next to you on national TV, dragged her through public humiliation, had a whole baby outside your marriage, and you still got the audacity to act like you the standard? Don't point fingers at me, don't point at Mendices, don't point at nobody but yourself." The words hit like bullets. Rashida gasped, her eyes filling even as her lips stayed pressed shut, refusing to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. Yandy's mouth hung open, shock plain on her face, her eyes flicking from Kirk to Rashida to Scrappy. Like she couldn't believe someone had finally ripped the silence wide open. The sound of Kirk's chair scraping as he stood was sharp, violent. He and Scrappy were chest to chest now, their breaths heavy, their words colliding midair. "Watch your mouth, bruh," Kirk barked, his finger stabbing toward Scrappy's chest. "You don't know what I built. You think you gonna check me in front of cameras?" Scrappy's finger jabbed right back, harder, his voice booming like thunder. "I don't think, I know. And I ain't scared to say what everybody else too weak to admit. You the problem. You the reason every time we come together it turns into chaos. And I'm done carrying your baggage." The shove came out of nowhere. Kirk's hand slammed into Scrappy's chest, sending him stumbling back. The room erupted instantly. Rashida screamed, Yandy jumped up, Jock yelled, "Chill, chill." But none of it was enough. Scrappy lunged forward, his fist flying in, grazing Kirk's jaw. Chaos swallowed the set. Mendices rushed in, pulling at Scrappy's arm, trying to hold him back, but not before Scrappy shoved Kirk hard against the table. Security stormed in, producers shouting orders no one could hear over the screams. The room dissolved into a blur of bodies, hands grabbing, voices clashing, the sound of furniture dragging across the floor. For a moment it was pure madness, and then everything shifted. Scrappy clutched his side, his face twisting in pain. At first, it looked like nothing more than adrenaline draining, but then his knees buckled. The screams turned sharper, panic slicing through the noise. Yandy shouted his name, her voice breaking. Rashida covered her mouth, tears spilling before she could stop them. Kirk's bravado drained from his face, fear flickering in his eyes as he froze. Realizing the push, the fight, had gone too far. Man. I'm tired, Scrappy gasped, his voice faint. Trembling as two producers grabbed him before he collapsed. I'm done with this. His words were weak, but they hit the room like a bomb. Paramedics rushed in minutes later, the flashing red lights outside splashing against the walls. A stretcher rolled through the chaos. Cameras kept rolling, catching every second. Scrappy lifted onto the stretcher, his chest rising unevenly, his eyes fluttering shut. Jock's hands shook as he whispered, "Oh my God," over and over. Rashida's sobs broke through the noise as she tried to hold on to Kirk, who stood frozen, his jaw tight but his eyes betraying guilt. Yandy wept quietly against Mendices's shoulder, her entire body trembling. The sirens wailed as the ambulance doors slammed shut, taking Scrappy away, leaving the set hollow. And then, just as silence threatened to return, the air cracked with the sound of heels clicking across the floor. Head snapped toward the door. Tasha K entered with the kind of confidence that didn't care about timing or tragedy. Her smirk stretched wide, a folder clutched in one hand, her phone recording in the other. She didn't pause, didn't soften. "Oh, don't get quiet now," she called out, her voice cutting through grief like glass. "Y'all throwing punches, sending men to the hospital, but none of you ready for the truth. And trust me, I got the truth. Receipts, recordings, everything. And when I drop it, the world will know exactly why this Frost versus Harris feud ain't ever ending." The room stiffened, every face shifting. Rashida's jaw locked, her glare sharp enough to pierce. Yandy groaned audibly, muttering, "Here we go," under her breath. Kirk shifted, his arrogance faltering as his eyes darted to the folder. Mendices leaned back, a smirk flickering across his lips as if amused by the chaos. And Jock, his voice a whisper, muttered, "Lord have mercy." As the storm grew darker, the fight had already shaken them. Scrappy had been carried out on a stretcher. But with Tasha K now standing in the center of the wreckage, it was clear, this wasn't the end of the chaos. This was only the beginning. The wail of the ambulance had faded, but the weight of it stayed behind. The set felt hollow, stripped of sound except for shallow breaths and the restless scrape of Kirk's shoes as he paced back and forth. Rashida sat still, her hands folded in her lap, whispering his name softly as though the repetition could rewind what just happened. Her eyes darted toward him, pleading for calm, but his jaw was tight, his chest heaving, and he looked like a man already rehearsing excuses in his head. Across from them, Yandy sat with her face buried in her palms, her body rocking. She'd seen fights before, but never one that ended with a friend being carried out on a stretcher. Mendices stood behind her, one hand steady on her shoulder, his expression fixed on Kirk with the cold glare of a man who had reached his limit. Jock was silent for once, hunched in his chair, his hands locked together like prayer wouldn't even help. And then came the echo of heels. Tasha K didn't tiptoe in, she stormed, holding a fat folder in one hand, her phone angled in the other. She smiled like she'd been waiting for the moment tragedy turned into headlines. "Oh, don't get quiet now," she called, her voice slicing through the air. "Y'all just sent Scrappy to the hospital, but let's not pretend this beef appeared out of thin air. I got proof. I got messages. And when I drop it, ain't none of you gone look the same." Rashida jumped up, her face blazing. "Girl, not now. Nobody needs you walking in here making things worse." Tasha waved her off like a fly. "You've been cleaning up his mess for years, Rashida. Defending him through cheating, scandals, babies, look where it got you. You want to fight me, but your real fight is sitting right next to you." Kirk finally snapped. "You don't know a damn thing about me, or my family. You just a blogger chasing clout." Her laugh cut sharp. She slapped the folder onto the table, papers nearly spilling. "You think I came empty-handed? Screenshots. Recordings. People close to you talking. You fooled Rashida, maybe fooled VH1, but you won't fool me. And when this folder opens, the world gone, see the real you." Yandy shot to her feet, shaking with anger. "We don't need this circus. Scrappy could have died, and you're here waving papers like this oppressed tour. Get out." But Tasha leaned back in her chair, her grin wider. "Of course you'd say that, Yandy. Always trying to act above it all. But some of these receipts? They got your man's name on them too." The room froze. Mendices stiffened, his voice dropping low. "Don't bring me into your lies." Tasha tapped the folder with her nails. "Lies? Baby, this is truth on paper." The tension snapped tight. Rashida's loyalty looked ready to crack, Yandy shook with fury, Kirk tried to mask sweat rolling down his face, and Mendices's fists clenched against the table. Jock muttered, "This too much," but no one listened. A producer rushed in, whispering into Kirk's ear. His color drained. Rashida grabbed his arm. "What happened?" His voice dropped. "Scrappy's stable, but he don't wanna see us." "Not me. Not you. Not Jock. He said he's done." The silence was suffocating. The man who had always played peacemaker, who carried everyone else's mess, had finally walked away. Tasha pounced. "Of course he don't wanna see y'all. He's tired of being the middleman, tired of carrying weight that don't belong to him. When he gets out, don't expect him back. This feud gon' eat itself alive, and I'll make sure the world sees it." The clip of her words hit social media before the night ended. Hashtags flew, shaky footage of Scrappy on a stretcher replayed across feeds, speculation spiraled. Some fans begged him to quit, others demanded he press charges, and VH1 producers teased leaks to keep everyone watching. When the group gathered again, the air was thick with unfinished war. Rashida sat tall next to Kirk, swollen-eyed but unshaken. Kirk folded his arms, pride stitched over guilt. Yandy entered like she was ready for battle, her chin sharp, her shoulders tense. Mendices followed, fists tight, eyes burning at Kirk. Jock shuffled in, nervous energy rattling his grin, and then the doors opened. Scrappy walked in, his steps were slower, careful, the hospital still clinging to him. A scar traced his temple, but it was his eyes that silenced the room, sharp, focused, stripped of patience. He sat down without a word, letting the stillness work harder than any speech. Tasha K leaned forward, smirk still there, folder still in hand. "Well, look who made it back. Hospital band still fresh, but I see you ready for truth. While you were down, I stacked receipts. And tonight, baby, they're opening." The folder slammed against the table, echoing like a gavel. Rashida shot up. "No. Not tonight. Not after everything. Scrappy doesn't need your drama. You live for breaking families apart." But Tasha tilted her head, voice calm. "Scream loyalty all you want, but the world knows already. Your man been playing dirty, and I got proof." Kirk slammed his palm on the table. "Don't test me, Tasha. I don't answer to no blogger. I answer to my family. You ain't family. You ain't nothing." Mendices leaned in, voice low but cutting. "Maybe let her talk, Kirk. If she got proof, let the world see who you really are. You've been pointing fingers for years while your house been burning." Yandy nodded sharply. "Exactly. Every time, it's blame us, blame Scrappy, blame everybody but yourself. Maybe tonight, the truth shuts you up." And as Tasha's hands spread the folder open, papers spilling across the table, the cameras zoomed closer, and everyone braced for the blast that was about to change everything. The papers spilled across the table like broken glass, each sheet sharp enough to cut through whatever fragile silence was left. Screenshots, emails, text threads, the kind of receipts nobody wanted to see under bright lights. Tasha K spread them out slowly, savoring the way every eye in the room followed her hands. "Here's your truth," she said, her voice calm but sharp enough to sting. Kirk Frost been running his mouth, feeding producers storylines, throwing y'all under the bus just to keep his name alive. And don't act surprised, half of y'all knew but stayed quiet because you liked the attention too. Scrappy leaned forward, his scarred face twisting with fury, his voice hoarse but loud. "So all this? Me ending up in a hospital, me carrying fights that weren't mine, it was you, Kirk. You set it up, you played games, and you let me bleed for it. You supposed to be my brother, but you been selling me out the whole damn time." Kirk shot up, his pride exploding louder than his guilt. "Shut up. You weak, that's why you landed in that hospital. Ain't nobody sell you out, you did it to yourself. Don't you ever put that on me." The words cut deep. Scrappy's chest heaved, his fist slamming against the table. "I ain't weak. I'm just done. Done protecting a man who don't know the meaning of loyalty. Done cleaning up your mess. Done sitting in rooms like this where everybody pretends family means something when it don't." His voice cracked, his pain naked in front of the cameras. And it silenced even the ones who usually jumped to argue. Rashida grabbed Kirk's arm, her eyes wet, her voice trembling. "Please, stop. This is going too far." But her grip wasn't enough to hold him steady. Kirk's face burned red, his jaw set, his pride too heavy to swallow. Yandy rose next, her eyes fixed on Kirk with a fire that had been waiting years to burn. "Every single time something happens, you deflect. You drag my husband's name, you point at Scrappy, you stir mess for ratings, and you hide behind Rashida's loyalty. Well tonight? You exposed. Everybody sees you now. No more pointing fingers, this is on you." Mendices stepped forward, his voice steady but low, carrying weight. "She's right. You've been hiding in plain sight. And all that talk about respect, about loyalty, it's just noise. You don't know the meaning. You only know power, and even that slipping through your hands." Jock finally spoke, his voice shaky. "Man, this too much. We supposed to be brothers, supposed to hold each other up. Look at us, one in the hospital, one breaking down, the rest of us tearing each other apart. What's left after this? Tasha leaned back, folding her arms with satisfaction, her smirk never fading. What's left? The truth. And y'all hate me for showing it, but don't hate the messenger. Hate the man who gave me the folder. Her eyes cut to Kirk, daring him to deny it. For once, Kirk had no words. He stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing but no sound coming. The sweat on his forehead told the truth. He refused to speak. Rashida buried her face in her hands, shaking, her loyalty stretched to its breaking point. Scrappy pushed his chair back slowly, the sound echoing like a final verdict. He stood, his body stiff but his voice steady. You know what? I'm done. I'm done trying to hold this fake family together. I almost lost my life behind this, and none of you cared until the cameras caught it. From this day on, I ain't your shield, I ain't your friend, and I ain't your scapegoat. Y'all can burn each other down if that's what you want, but I'm out. The silence that followed was suffocating. Yandy stared at him with wide eyes, realizing she had just lost the only one who ever tried to calm storms. Mendices gave a small nod, almost proud of the stand. Jock whispered, damn, under his breath, his face pale. Rashida wept quietly, rocking in her chair. And Kirk, he stayed frozen, his pride boiling in silence, unable to move, unable to admit the damage. The cameras zoomed in as Scrappy walked toward the door. His hand gripped the handle, his voice echoing back across the room. Fix it yourselves. I'm not carrying y'all anymore. The door slammed shut, the sound rattling the walls. Leaving only fragments of what used to be called a family, Tasha K gathered her folder slowly, her smirk widening as she stood. Well, there it is. The truth in black and white. Y'all wanted drama? You got it. The world will eat this up. And don't blame me when it does. She strutted out, heels clicking. Leaving devastation behind her, the room stayed still long after she left. The cameras capturing every tear, every trembling breath. Every ounce of pride stripped bare. The feud between the Frosts and the Harisas wasn't just a storyline anymore, it was scorched earth, and there was no coming back.